ever have one of those moments where you set out on a journey convinced you know exactly where you're headed, only to realize halfway through that you've been walking the wrong path the entire time? That was me, booting up Path of Exile again, eager to shake off the rust and get warmed up for POE 2's big update coming on the 4th. I was ready for the grind, the punishing boss fights, the deep character building, the adrenaline rush of a fresh league start. But somewhere along the way, something started to feel off. At first I ignored it, I brushed it aside. It's just an adjustment period, I told myself. POE 2 is always rough in the beginning, but the deeper you go, the more cracks that started to show up for me. The brutal RNG-based crafting that made upgrading gear feel like a gamble instead of progress, the frustratingly limited class diversity that left so many builds feeling exactly the same no matter how much you tried to customize them, and the loot. Loot mountains of useless items, with the actual good drops locked behind layers of grind and luck, making every upgrade feel more like a miracle than a reward. And then I thought about how much fun I'd been having in Last Epoch. That's when everything changed. Suddenly I wasn't fighting the game. I booted up Last Epoch, I was playing it. The combat once again felt smooth. The builds made sense. Progression felt rewarding instead of exhausting. And before I knew it, I just decided I cannot go back to Path of Exile 2 until they make some kind of change. So today I want to talk about why. Why Last Epoch does so many things better than Path of Exile 2, and why, despite years of loyalty to Path of Exile and GGG, I just can't play it anymore until they start fixing things. Crafting in Path of Exile 2 has always been a double-edged sword for me. I mean, sure, when you land that god tier item, it really does kind of feel amazing, but let's be honest. Crafting in PoE is like gambling at a high-stakes casino. You're either burning your currency to reroll stats or relying on third-party tools to calculate your odds, and either way, you're rarely ending up with an item which is actually beneficial for your all-around building needs. Then Last Epoch comes along and gives you a crafting system that feels like it respects your time. You want a specific stat? You can target it. Or if you want to upgrade it, you can. With risk, sure, but it's predictable, it's manageable. You're not playing slot machines, you're actually crafting. The difference is literally night and day. I mean, let's look at this closer. Say my build needs physical resistance, physical damage, and more dexterity. I can more or less pick up any item off the ground and roll these stats on it. It's what I truly love about this game. The only deciding factor is, of course, its forging potential. I mean, if I find a god roll stat item but one of the affixes is not beneficial, I can even remove it and replace it with a more favorable stat as long as I have the forge potential to do so. Also, if I find an affix that will go well with my build, I have a chance to pull it off of that garbage item and possibly use it on an item later on. And no, it's not as easy as I'm making it sound. Sometimes you roll a stat on a 21 point forge potential item that costs 18 or 21 points, and so you can't craft or forge it anymore. But that's the beauty of it. At least I know I have a chance to craft what I'm looking for. This system makes build crafting feel empowering rather than just frustrating. It made me realize just how exhausting Path of Exile 2's RNG-based loot and crafting was whenever I returned to it this week in an effort to warm up for the update coming up on the 4th. What I found was something so off-putting that I decided to just go back and continue trying new classes in Last Epoch. I mean, when you watch the GGG dev interviews, they always say that their primary goal in PoE 2 is to make the ground dropped items more impactful for leveling experiences. But man, it turns out it's just the majority of it is junk. Items for other classes and proper items for my build rolled randomly, or unusable affixes that left me without gear due to a lack of crafting items to continuously re-roll for the chance to get those affixes that I'm needing for my build to actually show up. I do know that eventually you will get what you're looking for, but I find that so punishing and unattractive. And once you've experienced the control you get from Last Epoch, it's just almost impossible to go back to Path of Exile 2. Build diversity is another thing I have to talk about here, because Last Epoch does something so brilliantly that it feels like Path of Exile 2 is just really missing the mark on it. Because in POE 2, we're always finding that there is a freedom there, but that freedom comes at a cost of complexity, and oftentimes viable builds are really dictated by a single meta that everyone has to follow if you are looking for any kind of success in the end game. Meanwhile, Last Epoch's mastery system is taking a different approach. You choose a class, you pick a mastery, and then every single one of your abilities and passives are being reflected in that choice in a meaningful way. A Lich doesn't play like a Necromancer, or a Blade Dancer doesn't play like a Falconer, even though they're both rogues. The level of customization just feels so personal, and that's what makes it so addictive. And it doesn't stop there, because as mentioned before, Blade Dancers and Falconers can be adjusted to use different weapons. A Falconer can dual wield swords or primary a spear. It doesn't have to only use a bow. And then there's damage types that you can fully spec into and complement different skills that buff or combo with other ones. I mean, it's a whole other universe of diversity that Path of Exile 2 claims it has, but in reality just doesn't exist for any real situation in which a player hopes to enter the endgame with and succeed. And that's the kicker, because Path of Exile 2 still has an incredibly deep system. It often feels like theory crafting is reserved for spreadsheet warriors, more or less, while Last Epoch makes this build experimentation just feel so fun and so unpunishing and reasonable. I mean, you can't expect every build to go to 500 plus corruption, but at least you can take the vast majority of build concepts to the end game and more or less succeed to some degree or not. Loot, as explained before, is the third reason I just cannot go back this time. I mean, instead of flooding your screen with junk items you'll never use, Last Epoch focuses on a more meaningful loot drop system. I mean, you actually feel excited when an item drops because there's just this higher chance it will be useful or modifiable, and of course there is still a lot of garbage dropping, but instead of grinding for 8 hours to find that solid piece that probably will get a random roll that doesn't fit what you need, you are getting something with potential to work with. As I explained before, you can pull modifiers off, you can add modifiers deterministically, so you don't have to worry about whether or not it's that much of a garbage piece. You will always be able to find something that you can use or reduce some kind of modifier off, even for other builds. While meanwhile in Path of Exile 2, loot filtering is just like that basic necessity, right? Without a filter, you're drowning in clutter, and even with one, you're constantly sorting through dozens of useless drops before finding something remotely valuable. It makes loot feel more like a chore rather than a reward. And yes, I know that Last Epoch also has the loot filter and it drops a lot of garbage, but once again, like I said, the loot that is dropping will have some kind of affix on it that most of the time you can use shattering shards to get the affixes off and use them at later times, right? I mean, the whole time I was in POE 2 this last week, I was literally grinding through the first 3 acts for drops, which of course were just not coming. And this led me to visit the merchants, which also were not offering anything that I was looking for. So it's just a shame that people have to go through such links for basic stats on items whenever you have a game like Last Epoch where deterministic crafting really is shown in a height which is just beyond measurability when it comes to Path of Exile 2. Now, as a side note, I also want to state that this game has an offline mode, which is a 300 IQ idea. I mean, so this isn't on that list of the reasons why I can't go back to POE 2, but I mean, I started thinking about all the times I have to go on trips where large portions of the journey are without connection. I mean, the airplane flights or hotels with garbage Wi-Fi, being able to just disconnect and play offline is a godsend and should not be looked over as a feature, which does indeed make this game a great idea to invest in and does kinda, in my opinion, give it a little bit of a heads up over the other big titles out there. In addition, the WASD control system that was in Path of Exile 2 was just about the only thing I could really point at as for a reason why I would stay in game. But hey, guess what? On the 17th, it's also coming to Last Epoch. But now, after spending time back in Last Epoch, I have asked myself, can I really go back? Can I go back to the grind-heavy, RNG-laden loot chase of Path of Exile 2 when I've tasted a game that lets me craft my own path? Can I go back to the rigid build meta when I've had this much fun experiencing with viable off-meta builds? Can I go back to shifting through piles of useless loot? Can I go back to always needing an internet connection just to play through it? I mean, can I? I don't know. Don't get me wrong. Look, Path of Exile 2 is still shaping up to be an incredible game, but Last Epoch has spoiled me, I gotta say. It has shown me what's possible when you streamline complexity without sacrificing depth, and that's a hard thing to forget, right? So, I mean, what about you? Has Last Epoch ruined your ARPGs for you, or do you still prefer the challenges of Path of Exile 2? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe for more ARPG content. And most importantly, guys, thanks for watching.